I prepared this video to walk you through how you would approach solving the case that's assigned for Chapter 2, which takes you into the codification to answer a research question, a financial reporting question. So just to give you an idea of what I intended the end results to look like. So I took one of the other cases from Chapter 2 as an example. In this case, the issue is Jones Brothers, who have a treasury note they bought 5 years ago, and the notes are now 2 months away from maturity. So they've asked, can this now be classified as a current asset in the balance sheet? And the requirements are to first cite guidance from the codification, respond to Jones Brothers, and then explain to Jones Brothers management how you located the relevant guidance, including search method used and which section you searched. Now, in the real world, I don't know that Jones Brothers management would be that interested in your search method, but as your professor, of course, I am. So I entered the codification and made a general guess, to be honest, that what I would be looking at is presentation. That, how items are presented in the financial statements. So when you scroll over the presentation, you'll see how it's divided. I put that in the next slide. So in presentation of financial statements, we have, of course, the balance sheet, stockholders' equity, comprehensive income, cash flows, income statement, notes, and a number of other topics. But since my question relates to current assets, 210, the balance sheet, appears to be the appropriate place to begin looking. When I expand the balance sheet to see the subtopics, I see, of course, the overall. Then it breaks it down to offsetting, contractors. So I can get this up a little bit. Some special development stage entities, financial services. None of that looks relevant. It looks like I should be searching in here and just sort of the overall balance sheet presentation. I did follow the directions in your textbook, which is a look at scope and scope exceptions to make sure that the topic applies to my situation. And I'm told that in terms of scope, guidance in the subtopic applies to all entities, and the guidance that relates to separate classification of current assets and current liabilities applies only when an entity is preparing a classified balance sheet for financial accounting and reporting purposes. And of course, that is what my question is: are these notes a current asset? So if I can find the answer, I know it will apply to my entity. I went back and chose the combine subsections option. I find when I combine subsections, it's easier to scan through the standard than to click on each individual topic. So I see what a balance sheet is, about offsetting. Well, this isn't an offsetting. And then I see the overall subtopic provides general guidance on the classification of current assets and current liabilities, and discusses, well, I'm not worried about determining working capital, but it is something that I am interested in. So I clicked on the current asset button, which refers me to the glossary. It's a little hard to read on the slide, but when I get to the glossary, I see the definition of current assets, cash and other assets or resources commonly identified as those that are reasonably expected to be realized in cash or sold or consumed during the normal operating cycle of the business. That sounds like what I have. I have something that's going to mature in the next couple of months, but I'm referred back to paragraphs 210-10-45-1 through 45-4, I can click on that directly and be taken to the relevant section of the that section of the codification. So when I go back to classification of current assets, I see cash available for current operations and items that are cash equivalents. And that's what this note would seem to represent, since it's going to mature in just the next couple of months. And then the other items that are typically treated as current assets, none of which really seem to apply to this particular note. So click again on cash equivalents, which will take me back to the glossary. And here I find my answer. It says cash equivalents, short-term, highly liquid investments. They give the characteristics of cash equivalents: convertible to known amounts of cash. So near their maturity, they present insignificant risk of changes in value because of changes in interest rates. Okay, well maybe, but then read on. Generally, only investments, and here's the word, with original maturities of 3 months or less qualify under the definition. Original maturity means original maturity to the entity holding the investment. For example, both 3-month U.S. Treasury bills and a 3-year U.S. Treasury note purchased 3 months from maturity qualify. However, a Treasury note purchased 3 years ago does not become a cash equivalent when its remaining maturity is 3 months. And that would seem to be the answer. Since it does not qualify as cash or cash equivalent, don't know that we can make a case for it being a current asset. So this is the source of my conclusion that the Treasury note not be reclassified. Now, I made, an educated guess about what section to look at in the codification and moved my way forward to find the answer to the question. Another search strategy is to type a term in the search bar. And so this green is what I got when I typed current assets in the search bar. And it would have eventually gotten me to where I needed to be. I got a number of different references, but one is where I ended up, which was, it looks balance sheet overall. And so I would have gotten to the right section. Might have had to wade through some things that were not relevant till I found the one that was relevant. By the way, if you type Treasury note in the search bar, because you're looking at Treasury note, you would come up with a number of references in the accounting standard codification, but not references that were directly on point, at least not in the first several pages. I didn't scroll through all 5 of them to find out, but I don't think it would lead you finally to that glossary. Very often you have to search under a more general topic rather than something very, very specific, because the standards are written in more general terms. Now, once you have your standard, of course, you have to do a little write-up to answer the 2 requirements. So a write-up for requirement 1 might look something like this. Just referencing the accounting standards codification. Current assets generally include cash and cash equivalents. Here's how they're defined, and then go on to explain that only investments, again with that magic word really is original maturity of 3 months or less qualify, and that it means original maturity to the entity holding the investment. Now note, I should say that I have to confess, I copied and pasted this from the authors of your textbook's solution. Please note that if quoting from the codification, be sure to use quotation marks, okay? And then goes on, sort of, let's put this into words. And it is a good idea not just to paste up a quote from the codification. You have to be able to let the reader know that you understand the codification and are applying it to the specific circumstances. Because Jones Brothers purchased the Treasury notes 5 years ago, these notes do not become a cash equivalent when the remaining maturity is 3 months or less. The notes also do not meet the description of other types of assets that are potentially classified within the current assets category and thus should not be reclassified. Requirement 2, you're asked to just explain how you got your solution. To locate the guidance, and it's you keep it very simple. Describe what I did. I went to the presentation area of the codification, then balance sheet overall, and I found the guidance in the other presentation matters section and the definition of cash equivalents in the glossary of this topic. Now, obviously, if you went and used a different search method, key terms, whatever, you would want to indicate how you did it. But notice it's fairly simple. It's not shouldn't be a very elaborate description. Just to let me know the steps you followed. So this is just again a brief overview, so you have an idea of when you have that case to what I'm looking for in terms of the case requirements.